Or would you like to wait for my husband, Mr. Bree? I'm afraid I've no idea how long his meeting will take.
I want him to visit my mother.
What's wrong with her?
Pains.
What kind of pains, Mr. Bree?
Pain. Diarrhea. She gets hot, too.
Feverish, you mean?
Yeah.
What's your mother's name?
Josephine Bree.
Joseph. And the address?
The cottage, Vale Farm. It's across the first field. You can't see it from the road.
How old is she?
72.
Oh, well, we couldn't expect her to come here then, could we? I'll see that Dr. Martell gets your message.
She didn't want me to bother him, but I'm out at work all day. I work for the gas company.
Yes, I'll tell the doctor as soon as he comes in. Perhaps he'll get out to you this evening, though it may have to wait till tomorrow.
Yes.
It is not tolerable that these thefts from the hospital should put the community at risk.
I quite agree, Major.
I have instructed the Felt Policy to inquire into it.
Good.
However, there is another matter I wish to discuss. We are pleased to learn that the Controlling Committee has decided to embark on a number of road improvement schemes.
Ah, well, yes, that isn't my department, Major, actually.
Oh, I think it is. After all, since this will bring a number of people into employment, it should affect their general standard of health, no?
Indirectly, I suppose, yes.
Good. It's an excellent idea. We're enthusiastic to do whatever we can to help, Doctor. Therefore, we've drawn up a list of proposals concerning various road projects which we would suggest need your attention. We have, of course, had the opportunity of observing the condition of roads in all parts of the island.
Well, perhaps you prefer to see that the repairs that you're recommending yourselves.
We do not have the available workforce, Doctor, for such improvements.
I'll pass the information on.
Perhaps you would let me have your views when you've considered the list.
Yes, I'll make sure someone does, Major. An old woman, I take it?
72, I think he said. You live out at Vale Farm, Daddy, near Long Crest. It's Peter's land.
Oh, yes, I remember. Your father died, didn't he, a couple of years ago?
Yes, that's what he said.
God knows how they manage in that great barn of a place.
He said something about living in a cottage.
Oh? Since when?
Across the first field. I've got it written down.
Oh, I'll try and fit him in this evening.
Well, I did warn him it might not be till tomorrow.
Favoured by the Greeks, loved by the Romans, and totally ignored by the authors of the Holy Bible.
It's the best I could do. We had a proper meal yesterday. Sort of proper.
Windy cabbage. Second only for Flater's production to the bellows, or the bagpipes.
Really, Philip, you're quite disgusting. What did they want at the Commandantur this time, eh?
You know, I'm not quite certain. Another little ploy, I suspect. Nothing to do with me, really.
That makes a change.
Well, Major Friedel said how pleased he was here that we were doing something about improving the roads.
Roads? Are you?
Thinking about it, yeah. Help with the employment problem, wouldn't it? He actually gave me a list of roads he thought we should make a start on.
Friedel talked to you about roads? Oh, he's mad.
Oh, I wouldn't say that, Olive. Devious, perhaps, but not mad. Well, I think I'd like your mother in hospital for a day or two, Mr. Bree. Just as a precaution. How frequent have these diarrhea attacks been?
I'm not here during the day. I couldn't say, Doctor.
She's all alone, is she?
Well, I have to go to work.
When did you move in here?
4 weeks ago, the Germans evicted us.
From the farmhouse?
There's 30 of them living in there now.
I see. This place isn't really very suitable, is it? How long had it been empty?
A few years.
Did you protest?
Well, I told Mr. Porteous.
Because it's his property?
Yes, all the land round here, the farm, everything. He said he'd talk to the field commandant.
Yeah. For what good that would do. Your mother wasn't ill Before you were moved, I take it?
Well, she wasn't in bed, Doctor.
Yeah. Well, I'll make the necessary arrangements for tonight, if possible. Otherwise, first thing in the morning.
I leave for work 4/7.
Well, you better warn her not to be surprised if the ambulance chaps turn up while you're out, in that case. What's this?
Water. I get it from the stream.
You don't drink it, do you?
Well, it is running water, Doctor. There's no tap here.
You've got a jam jar or something I can take a sample away in, Mr. B? Something clean. You boil it?
Well, it's not easy. We got no cooker, only that little stove. It's meant to burn coke, but most of the wood I get's too damp. It won't always light.
Well, what do you mean? You're at the gasworks, aren't you? Surely you could get yourself something to burn. What about anthracite dust or coal tar? You're allowed so much of that for that sort of a stove. Oh, you can't use this water, Mr. B. Not as it is, not even for washing. Not unless you boil it first. How do you do any cooking without fuel?
I get bread from the town. Mother eats fruit when I get some.
Is that all? What about you?
I manage.
Well, Mr. B, we have to be careful these days. Living like this, you must be particularly so. Now, listen, please, this is very important. Always boil this water, however difficult that is to do. You must boil it first. And don't eat raw fruit, not even fruit.
But fruit is all that Mother will eat.
Yes, but it should be cooked first. Well, there's the slightest danger of any bacteria being around the place. You must take care, do you understand? Your mother's probably got nothing more than the enteric problems we've all been having. I'm just being cautious, that's all. Oh, and while she's away, perhaps you can do something about your heating and cooking. Get yourself some proper fuel.
Don't be late, Claire.
No, I won't. I've got to take this, though. I promised Daddy I'd drop it into the laboratory for him.
Well, I'm sure I could have found a cleaner-looking jar.
I don't think it's the jar that's dirty.
Peter! You're an early bird.
Daddy's out.
Oh, perhaps I haven't come to see him.
Oh,
No, on the other hand.
maybe you have.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm late anyway.
Been fishing?
No, I'm just going, if I can find my net.
It's a sample of stream water, I think. Philip wants it analysed. Come in the kitchen.
Will he be long?
I've no idea, Peter. He's got a lot of visits, I know, and I think he's got to see Major Friedel.
When hasn't he?
It really is too much. He's got enough to do without all that committee nonsense.
Yes, well, it's not really nonsense, is it?
Well, you know what I mean.
It's going to be worth my while waiting.
I honestly don't know, Peter. I don't even know if he'll come home at lunchtime. Well, what is it? Can I help?
Oh, well, it's about a tenant of mine, a Mrs. Bree. I gather she's in hospital.
Yes. Philip saw her last night. He didn't say very much. I really don't know what's wrong with her.
I was just wondering if there's anything I could do to help. I feel rather responsible, you see.
Why?
Well, the Germans evicted them a month ago. I couldn't really protest, although Edward Bree asked me to. I mean, the house is much too big for them, and they don't farm the land. They haven't for years. But the mother is quite elderly and frail, you know. She doesn't get about very much.
Yeah. I believe she's deaf, too.
Very. Anyway, the Germans said that the cottage was quite adequate for 2 people. Well, they're right, really. At least they would be if the place was in better condition. Well, I did my best to straighten the place out. Cleaned it, slapped some whitewash around, that sort of thing. But, well, now the old woman's in hospital, I'm beginning to wonder whether I shouldn't have stood up to the Germans a bit more.
Would they have taken any notice?
Well, who can tell? Still.
Not your fault, Peter.
Well, I hope not. That water wasn't from their stream, was it?
I believe it was, yes.
Contaminated?
I don't know. I suppose that's why Philip wanted it tested, to find out.
I'd like to talk to him sometime about the whole thing.
Yes, I'll tell him.
Afraid there's one road we can't undertake to repair, Major.
Oh?
Yes, most of the others we already knew about, and the committee did ask me to thank you for your suggestions.
Which road?
The road to Vale Farm.
To Vale Farm? But I understand it's in an appalling state.
I can't disagree with that, Major. I had to go along it myself last night to get to a patient.
So? I don't understand, Doctor.
It leads to an ammunition dump.
That was a temporary sighting. It will very soon be cleared.
All the same, Major, Under Article 52 of the Hague Convention, we are not required to do any work on a project of a military nature.
Doctor, did I understand you to say you had occasion to go along this road last night?
Yes.
To visit a patient?
Oh, to get part way towards a patient?
So that wherever else the road leads, it also serves the residents of Vale Farm?
Yes, exactly. And the residents of Vale Farm are now 30 German soldiers. They've been there for a month. Bree and his mother were moved to the cottage across the field at the top of the lane. So I'm afraid we can't repair that road, Major, not while your soldiers occupy the only house actually on it, whether the ammunition dump is there or not.
They said they were stock-taking and that the lab was closed, as if the hospital's got anything to do with the Germans. I just can't stand them. They're oh, well, I don't know, but they glare at you so accusingly. They make me feel aggressive and guilty. I just can't help it.
I know.
They can't keep their noses out, can they?
Well, I couldn't refuse to give it to them.
Of course you couldn't. It doesn't matter.
Look, surely they only make matters worse by being so petty.
Oh,
They
they're
must
not
see
being
that.
petty, Olive. There have been so many thefts at that hospital. Something has got to be done about it.
Well, why can't our own police be left to handle it?
Because there may be Germans involved, for one thing. As there were when the sulphur jugs were taken.
Daddy, that was their own military hospital. What business are they in ours?
So what about the sample?
Well, they said that they would send you the analysis as soon as it was done.
Yeah.
I had to give them all the details. I'm sorry.
No, it doesn't matter. No, I'd have preferred the analysis to have been done on the QT, obviously. It would have given us something to back our arguments with if the results had been positive. Well, it's on the cards, Olive. The water engineer's been telling them for weeks, and the Vale Farm area is exactly the sort of place it would happen to.
What could happen?
I was simply trying to avoid a scare, at least until there was proof of anything to be scared about. There may not be, of course.
But what?
In that water. Sewage contamination.
And how is she now?
Recovering.
Good.
It was not serious, then?
Well, not too serious, no. It was weakening for an old woman in her condition.
Yes, of course. Did you suspect any specific illness, Doctor, when you had her admitted?
Well, it could have been dysentery. One or two of her symptoms did suggest
was
that.
not.
Fortunately not, no.
Sit down, Doctor.
Well, I had hoped we'd keep this very brief.
If you please. Was it because of suspected dysentery that you had the water analysed?
No, not entirely.
Tell me if I'm wrong, Doctor. Dysentery spreads through infection, does it not? When infected people handle food and so on, is that not so?
Well, it thrives certainly where standards of cleanliness are poor.
And the cottage where this old woman lives is a standard of cleanliness poor?
Very.
I understand Mr. Porteous had the place cleaned before Bree and his mother moved in.
Yes, the cottage had been neglected for some years, Major. It's in a very bad state of repair. It is difficult to keep free from dirt. No, Major, I had the water analysed because... Well, because the only source of water to the cottage is a stream that runs across a field quite close to the farmhouse cesspool.
So you were looking for typhoid fever?
I was looking for contamination.
But why was the water being analysed without any kind of documentation, Dr. Martell? It's not the usual procedure.
Had I taken the sample into the hospital myself, there would have been.
Then why didn't you?
Oh, good heavens, do I have to explain my...
Any threat to the health of the islanders is a threat to the health of my men.
I am perfectly well aware of the threat
German
to the
medical
islands
staff
and to everybody
immediately.
else. There is no point in notifying disease before it exists. Had the sample indicated the slightest presence of contamination, of course I would have notified
explain why
everybody
your
involved.
daughter was
My
involved,
daughter?
unless, of course, you were trying to conceal something.
My daughter was not involved, as you put it. You're making an unnecessary issue out of this. I was simply attempting a shortcut. Admittedly, there was no attempt at concealment.
Very well.
God heavens, what I mean is my daughter works at the hospital,
Thank
was
you,
going in,
Doctor.
it seemed a perfect...
Perhaps you will see to it that all proper forms and requisitions are completed in future, Doctor, however short the cut.
May I go now?
You say that this stream runs close to the farmhouse cesspool, so that any leakage from the cesspool would almost certainly contaminate the stream.
That's exactly what I have been saying.
Might it also contaminate the supply to the farmhouse?
Of course, that is quite possible.
Then that supply must be analysed too, immediately.
The doctor's analysis showed no contamination.
Nevertheless...
Right, and while we are on the subject, I won't apologise for repeating the water engineer's point. I know he's written to you several times about it. There are grave dangers on the island due to the overcrowding. The entire water supply system, drainage, sewage disposal, it is all being very severely strained, particularly in places like Vale Farm.
Oh, why there in particular?
Because the cesspool was dug originally for a household of 5 or 6 people. There are now 30 of your soldiers living there.
No, all these cesspools should be cleared and inspected regularly.
Which is precisely the request the water engineer has made again and again.
Is there a problem?
I have asked the control.
And we have asked you, Major, for the fuel.
Fuel?
We have insufficient fuel to operate the cesspool carts in the remote parts of the island. If that work is to be done, the petrol quota will have to be increased.
The fuel situation is difficult at the moment.
The health situation could rapidly become impossible, Major.
Home again, love? Oh, not too warm in here, miss.
No.
I'll see if I can get this stove started.
Looks as though he's been doing a bit of hoarding. Better be careful.
Yes, well, I wouldn't blame him, would you?
Well, we'll be off then, Mr. Porteous.
Right. Thanks very much.
Thanks. It's going to be all right, Mrs. Bree. It's going to be all right. Oh, it's just dreadful, Peter.
What?
Well, Daddy should never have discharged her.
Well, what else could he do?
Well, I don't know. Send her to the convent or somewhere. They have old people there.
Yes, homeless old people.
Well, you can't exactly call this a home, can you? I'd better see about making a drink for her.
Well, there'll be no drink for anyone unless I can get this wretched stove to go.
Lying there all day long, frightened.
What? Is she frightened?
Well, wouldn't you be?
Yes, I suppose so.
Unable to hear anything? I mean, it must be so confusing for her. Do you think she has any idea what's going on?
When's Ed will get back?
As soon as I should think. He's gone 6. Oh, I hate them, Peter. I just hate them. How can they do this?
I don't know. It's just the war, I suppose.
No war. Always the excuse.
I'm sorry. I know it's a cliché. What else can I say?
Well, what have these people got to do with war? What has she got to do with war, for God's sake?
Well, can't Mr. Ambrose take care of it? It's his... Yeah. You've tried it, have you? Very well. Yeah, tell him I'll be there. I shall never understand them so long as I live. Never.
There's another one tonight.
Another one.
Wanted. Parents to adopt a baby due in 3 months. Poor little thing. I mean, what sort of life will it have? Everyone will know.
What would you say if it was Claire?
What with the German, Claire? Well, that's one thing you can be sure of.
Do you know what now? They can't leave anything alone, not even their own decisions.
Well, what's happened?
That road scheme.
I thought they approved.
Oh, they did, wholeheartedly. But now I am informed that, owing to the shortages, no more coke is to be made available for use in our steamrollers. Which means, Major, that none of the work the Felt Commandant was so keen we should make a start on can now be done at all. So much for the jobs we were hoping to provide.
It is possible to mend roads, Doctor, without using heavy machinery.
And a few potholes here and there, maybe, but certainly no major repairs, no improvements, no new roads, and none of the widening plans we'd drawn up.
Then the workers you were going to employ on road making can be given the immediate task of clearing drains and cesspools.
What?
I think we agreed that should have priority.
We did not. We agreed that was work that had to be done as soon as we got the petrol.
Am I to understand the controlling committee that you will not build roads and will not clean cesspools?
It isn't a question of will or won't, Major. You know that perfectly well. It is a question of can't. We cannot. Damn it all, man. It is in our own interests to maintain proper water supplies and drainage. We don't want disease here any more than you do.
Well, you're quite finished.
I am sorry, Major, but it is so bloody frustrating. First of all, we get one directive, and then another one impression, and another one contradicting it, one decision, and another one totally different.
The German military government has no desire to frustrate your work or your good intentions so far as the health and welfare of the civilian population of this island is concerned.
Very glad to
However, it is impossible to guarantee unlimited supplies of everything we need under present conditions.
We don't get any supplies
I have
at all.
said to you before, we suffer as much as you do. Whatever is uncomfortable for the islanders is uncomfortable for us also.
I wasn't aware that we were talking about comfort, Major.
You're taking a very hostile attitude, Doctor.
I am not taking an attitude at all. I am simply stating facts. The controlling committee is doing its best to try to provide employment and maintain a reasonable standard of health, and your prevarication is no help whatever.
There is just enough coal and just enough kerosene on the island to keep the gasworks and the electricity generators going for only 3 months. You are well aware of that.
Yeah, I am also well aware that you said there would be no problem in getting further supplies over from France.
Until those supplies are available, emergency measures are necessary.
Emergency measures are
Perhaps
exactly
we should
what I
continue
am
our
talking
discussion
about.
later.
We should
Doctor,
have
later.
emergency...
Will you please go now, Doctor? It is not politic for you to be heard too often, adopting your present manner.
It would control any approach from the north. Yes. Dave.
The decision has just been taken about the site for the next heavy anti-aircraft gun.
Oh, yes.
Near the north coast, on Vale farmland.
Oh, dear. What about the ammunition dump, then? Does that stay after all?
No, neither does the cottage. It'll have to come down.
Well, that's interesting. The landowner has asked to see me.
Oh, Porteous. What about?
I've no idea. He couldn't have heard about the gun site, I suppose.
The decision has only just been taken. Whatever it is, you might suggest to him the possibility of moving the old woman and her son back to the farmhouse.
Back?
The cottage occupies the ideal position for the gun site, but the farmhouse is too far away to conveniently house the crew. We shall have to put up new quarters.
Oh, it's a pity we didn't have time to persuade Martel to improve the approach road first.
We must get something down about the cesspool.
Oh, why, if the men are moving out?
The gun site will have to take water from the stream the cottage has been using.
Ah. Well, that will mean giving the water engineer the petrol he's been asking for.
Some of it, certainly. Although the committee will certainly refuse to service Vale Farm until the troops have gone.
Once they have gone, though, and the old woman is resident again...
Perhaps we should make her return conditional on clearing the cesspool.
I'm here, Major Friedel, to intercede on behalf of some tenants of mine.
Do sit down, Mr. Porteous.
Thank you.
What can I do?
Well, some 40 years ago, this particular family became tenants of my father, in fact. They farmed. Unfortunately, their approach to farming was rather peasant, and the result was that the land hardly supported two of them, let alone three. So, when the son was old enough, he took a job as a labourer with the gas company, where he still works. And when his father died, he tried to keep his job and the farm running, but that proved impossible, and so I absorbed the land into another farm, but let the family stay on in the house, as that wasn't needed.
Are we talking about the present occupants of the cottage at Vale Farm?
You are well informed, Major Friedel.
I am aware that German troops are billeted in the farmhouse.
Yes, well, my tenants were evicted.
I expect you want to talk about the water supply.
Well, not just that, Major. I mean, the cottage is totally unsuitable for the old woman. There's no gas, no electricity, no heating apart from one small coke stove, and fuel for that is... It's a neglected building. Drafty and dirty, not at all the right sort of place for a semi-invalid, which is what she is.
Does this cottage belong to you as well, Mr. Porteous?
Yes, it does.
Which is presumably why you are here, instead of letting the Brees speak for themselves.
Well, Edward Bree is not very articulate, Major, and I do feel rather responsible for them. They've been tenants for such a long time.
Are the Brees dissatisfied about paying rent for the cottage, or are you unhappy at charging them?
I am not charging them any rent at the moment.
Oh, I see. Well, I'm not clear, Mr. Porteous, what it is you expect from me.
Well, quite simply, I'm wondering whether it's possible for you to house these people anywhere else.
You must know that accommodation on the island is very difficult to arrange.
Well, I appreciate that, Major, but you see, the old woman is very much more of an invalid than any of us at first understood. It really is not possible for her to go on living in these third-rate conditions.
Have you an alternative suggestion?
Well, no, I'm afraid I haven't.
What about the nuns? There are 1 or 2 convents with space for elderly infirm people.
Yes, but only for those with no home or relatives on the island.
If the Brees were still living in the farmhouse, you would have no complaint.
No, of course not. It's their home. As I said, they've lived there for many years. I know it's rather large for them, but it's certainly in better condition than the cottage and much more convenient.
Your own house is rather large, of course. Would you have room to accommodate the family there?
My mother is herself an invalid, Major.
Which means, perhaps, that she uses less of the house than she might.
It would not be a convenient arrangement.
No?
No. There would be cooking difficulties. The house is not suitable for sharing. And the Brees are a poor family, Major. They would feel uncomfortable.
Naturally. And so would you, I've no doubt.
What I mean...
I think I understand what you mean, Mr. Porteous. There is another consideration, I take it. If the Brees were able to move back into the farmhouse, you would be able to collect rent once more.
That is quite immaterial.
Is it?
I'm sorry to have taken up so much of your time, Major Friedel.
One moment, please. You say you would have no complaints if the Brees were back in the farmhouse?
Well, no, of course not. I thought that was what we were discussing.
It may be possible to arrange things for you. I'm not entirely satisfied with the accommodation at the farmhouse. The men are rather a long way from our main camps.
Oh.
There is one thing, however.
Yes?
The controlling committee would have to arrange for the clearance of the cesspool at Vale Farm before the Brees would be allowed to take up residence again.
Before?
It is necessary.
But I understood there was some
Once
reason...
the work has been done, Mr. Porteous, I would be prepared to consider your request. But I must stress, the work must be done first. So, if you have any influence...
But I must point out, Major, that if there is a sewage problem at the farm, it's entirely due to the 30 men that have been housed there. Your men.
Whatever you consider to be the cause, Mr. Porteous, the situation remains the same. We have to be vigilant about disease.
But what I mean is that if your men...
The German occupying forces do not have the machinery or resources available, I'm afraid. Now, if it becomes possible to reallocate the farmhouse for civilian use, I shall let you know at once.
Thank you. You've no idea how long...
Once the cesspool has been cleared, then we shall see.
Very well, I shall hear from you, Major.
When did he tell you this, Peter?
Yesterday afternoon.
They're up to something. They must be. Because, look, I got this 2 days ago from the water engineer. A limited amount of petrol is to be allowed for the use of the cesspool carts. It is strongly recommended that we service Vale Farm first, since the house has been reallocated for civilian occupation.
But Friedel must have known about that all the time.
Of course.
Well, that means that poor old Mrs. Bree will be able to go home.
Ah, will she, though? I don't know.
Well, why not? If you...
Well, no, Friedel made it quite clear that he would decide whether or not the Brees could go back if and when this cesspool was serviced.
But the cesspool is being serviced tomorrow morning. As far as I know, the troops are already out. Olive, we got a drink we can offer this chap? I think there's some sort of small celebration called for.
Why?
Ah, well, on second thoughts. My God, they're in a strange lot, you know. I thought I had really put my foot right into it last time I was with old Richter. And then having got practically kicked out of his office, we get the go-ahead on the petrol. And now this? The last people we gave this to both died within a week.
Oh, thank you very much.
Cheers.
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 Oh, Mr. Porteous.
I've got some good news, Edward. I've come to tell you that the Germans have left the farmhouse and you can move back.
Oh.
Well, I've been to see the Feld Commandant. It's all agreed.
Thank you.
And the cesspool's been cleared out as well. The Germans haven't done too much damage. Well, Miss Martell and I went and cleaned it out of it. The place is in quite a good state. So, if you'd like to fix up a time to move, I'll come along and give you a hand. Well, your mother will be pleased.
It doesn't matter, Mr. Porteous.
Sorry?
About moving back, it doesn't matter, but thank you.
What do you mean it doesn't matter?
We'll stay on here.
But you can't.
But we can manage, and Mother's had enough moving about.
Edward, we can't let this go. I mean, it's a small victory in its way. You know what the Germans are like. They don't often give in to requests of this sort. We must take them up on it.
We're all right here.
Well, how can you be all right? I mean, you've got no gas, no electricity. How long's that little bit of coke going to last?
It's a good little stove once you get the hang of it.
I'm sure it is. But nevertheless, I shall come along tomorrow evening and give you a hand moving your mother back to her own house. All right?
No. Thank you.
Look, I'm sorry. But both Dr. Martell and myself have been to a considerable amount of trouble on your behalf, and the Germans have, quite uncharacteristically, agreed to a number of things. We must take advantage of them, otherwise they will be reluctant to consider any other appeals we may have to make. I mean, for God's sake, why should they, if we're going to turn down their compromises?
We don't want to move back, thank you.
Have you asked your mother?
We're staying here. She's all right. It's better leave her where she is. It doesn't do her any good, all this.
Well, your doctor seems to think she would be better off in her own home. Look, if that farmhouse stays empty for any length of time, Bree, the Germans will only requisition it again for something else.
Yes, and if we were living there, we'd get thrown out again, wouldn't we? We're staying where we are. Thank you, Mr. Porteous.
Yo! Stop! Did you not hear me? I ordered you to stop.
Papers? Come. You are a lunatic on that bicycle. I don't care if you get yourself killed. I don't see why you should kill me. Drop. What? Where are you going?
Home.
What have you in your pockets?
My papers, I showed them to you.
Your coat pockets. The coat is sagging. What have you in the pockets?
Nothing. It's an old coat.
No. What is this?
I work for the gas company. It must have got in there.
Come on.
Where did you get this?
I needed it.
What for?
To boil water.
Boil water?
Dr. Martel told me to get some.
Martel?
He said I had to boil the water.
Where did you get it? The use of coke is restricted. It is not available for domestic stoves. Is that what you burn it in? A stove? You could have used wood or anthracite dust with tar. You were taking it home?
I had to boil the water.
What other form of cooking do you have?
None.
Just this stove?
Yes.
A slow combustion stove?
It's a stove, round stove. It's meant to burn coke.
Coke is not available.
Dr. Martel told me to get some.
Told you?
He said I had to boil the water.
There are other ways of boiling water.
He said I had to boil the water and cook all the food. He told me to get some proper fuel.
Did he tell you where to get it? Well?
He said I should get it from the gasworks.
Did he tell you to steal it? Did he tell you to steal?
He said I should get some proper fuel while my mother was away.
Your mother?
He sent her to hospital.
You live at Vale Farm?
The cottage.
You're the man who refused to move.
My mother's too ill to move.
But the doctor has recommended she should be moved.
We don't need to move.
There are fireplaces at the farm. If you go back there, then you won't need to steal coke.
We're all right where we are.
There's also gas at the farm for cooking. How long have you been taking the coke?
He told me to get some.
Did you obtain permission? Did you apply for a special allocation of coke from the proper authorities?
Dr. Martel told me to get some.
From the gasworks?
I worked there.
We must search his cottage.
Yeah.
Where is it? The coke. Where is the coke?
She looks scared here, Oberleutnant.
She knows what we're going to find. Did you make a formal request for a special allocation of coke?
No, of course not.
Or suggest that Bree should?
No.
Even though you knew the cottage had no other form of heating or cooking than this stove?
No, I was perfectly well aware that Bree had enormous difficulties. There's actually no point at all in asking for Coke.
Oh?
Oh, we all know what the position is, Major.
But the man insists you told him he had to have Coke.
I told him it was essential that he boil the stream water and cook all food.
Neither of which he can do without fuel.
No?
Then did you suggest that he should steal Coke from the gasworks?
Is that what he's told you?
I'm asking you, Doctor.
Well, I told him he should do his best to get proper fuel.
Proper fuel?
And when I saw him, he was trying to use damp wood.
The proper fuel for that stove, Dr. Martel, is Coke.
Yes, it's a slow combustion stove, Oberleutnant.
So you told him to get Coke?
No.
That's what you meant?
I meant that damp wood was useless.
So you told him to get Coke from the gasworks?
I do not encourage people to break the law or to defy your regulations.
Even in a case of dire need.
Would you call this a case of dire need, Doctor?
Yes, I think I probably would.
Even so, you did not encourage Bree to obtain Coke, whatever the cost.
As far as I remember, the word was never even mentioned.
Word?
Coke. As far as I remember, I told him he should get anthracite dust or coal tar.
What fuel do you use, Dr. Martel, in your own home?
What nowadays? Wood, mostly. A bit of coal when I can get it.
Where do you get this coal?
From the coal merchant.
Not from Bree.
What?
Did you ever buy Coke from Bree?
No, of course not.
Or trade with him for Coke on behalf of other people?
No, I have not.
Has he ever offered you Coke?
Look, am I being accused of something or what?
We are simply trying to ascertain certain facts, Doctor.
Facts? You know perfectly well what the facts are. You evicted Bree and his mother from their home. They had nowhere to go but a totally unsuitable cottage with no gas, no electricity, and no mains water. Now, the old woman was quite obviously ill and in need of constant care and attention, and Bree has done nothing but his best to look after her. That is all. That is the only fact worth noting, Major. Now, if he's been taking a bit of coal now and again, who can blame him? I'd probably have done the same thing myself in similar circumstances.
So you knew he was stealing?
No, I did not know he was stealing, but good God, you've been as good as telling me so for the last half hour.
Thank you, Doctor. I'm afraid we have discovered several boxes of Coke under the old woman's bed. Bree must have been taking it home for some days.
Ever since I told him to get proper fuel.
Probably.
Well, all I can say is he's only been doing what he thought best for his mother. And to that extent, I suppose I've encouraged him, but he is not a criminal.
It is a criminal offense to steal, Dr. Martel.
If that is what he's been doing.
I don't think there's any argument.
Shouldn't that be for a court to decide?
It is also a criminal offense to be an accessory.
I'm quite satisfied with the doctor's explanation, Oberleutnant. The man Bree is obviously of low intelligence.
All the more reason I'd have thought for treating his situation with some sympathy.
Perhaps.
What I don't understand is why you're dealing with him at all. Why don't you hand the matter over to our police? It's surely their business.
Not entirely. There are fuel control orders in
Fuel
force.
control order? How much has he taken? A few pounds, hardly more. It can't have been a significant amount. He'd never have got away with it.
It is nevertheless a very serious matter.
Yes, that's how you see it, isn't it? Well, all right, if you do insist on arresting the man, would you please let me know? Something will have to be done quickly about his mother.
We have arrested him, Dr. Martel. We have him here now.
How is she?
Been dead some time.
Dead?
Frightened out of her life by the look on her face.
What the hell's been going on?
I don't know.
Who's done all this?
I tell Bree he should boil the water and cook his food. It's the only thing in the place that gives off any heat.
Yes, burns coke.
Exactly, and he's been stealing it.
Stealing?
Not much, just enough to stuff in his pockets twice a day.
But why the hell didn't he say something?
Midday and night time, he's bicycled backwards and forwards with as much as he dared carry.
And they've arrested him for that?
It's theft, Peter, yes.
Must have been why he didn't want to move. Didn't want the stuff discovered.
Probably.
Under the terms of the Hague Convention, the civil court is permitted to deal with offences committed by islanders where they do not affect military security or military discipline. Do you understand?
I've done nothing against you.
But where the interests of the German occupying forces are involved, Mr. Bree, the military court must try all relevant aspects of the offence first.
I've done nothing.
You have been charged with violating the regulations concerning fuel control.
I had to have some coke, that's all, just a bit of coke.
Coke is reserved for use in generating electricity.
I had to boil the water, Dr. Martel told me that. He said it had to be boiled. It was bad.
You will be tried in the Felt Commandant's Court for violating fuel control regulations and thereby threatening supplies of electricity to military installations on the island.
I've threatened nobody.
You will then be handed on to the civil court to answer the theft charges. Have you understood me? I am sorry about your mother, Mr. Bree.
What happened?
The Germans sentenced him to 6 months penal servitude.
Oh, poor man.
And the magistrates?
The same.
Just for stealing a few pounds of coke.
They felt they had to make an example of him.
As if he hasn't been through enough already. 6 months in prison.
Oh, 12 months, The Royal Court is not concerned with the findings of the Germans' court. The bailiff has said that when someone is sentenced by the Germans' court as well as our own, the sentences must run consecutively.
Well, here or France?
France, I'm afraid. You'll always blame me, you know?
Yes, well, a lot of people will blame you for a lot of things when this war's over. You and that committee.